My name is Yvonne Max, and I am the founder and the chair of the channel community and the founder and CEO of Co-Cheer, a coaching and consulting practice, and also a channel community gold supporter. Welcome to the next episode of Smashing the Class Ceiling. In this series, I'll be interviewing and showcasing some of the fantastic individuals that we have in the channel who have all come from a low social economic background, but have gone on to build incredibly successful careers. They will be sharing their stories of how they've navigated their class corridors, the corporate corridors even, and smashed through that class ceiling. So without delay, I would like to welcome my very next guest, Hayley Knott. So Hayley is the Senior Marketing Manager and Women in Tech co-lead at Natilik, and also a mentor for the Generation Success. Thank you, Hayley, for agreeing to come on the show with us and share your story.
That's all right. Thank you so much for having me, Yvonne.
I can't wait to get going with this one. So Hayley, we've known each other for quite some time now. We met through the Women in Tech initiatives that you run at Natilik. Now, you've also always been a great supporter of the channel community, so we appreciate that and thank you very much for that. And through our interactions, I discovered your passion for social mobility and gained a very small insight into your background. However, most people won't know where you grew up or what your story is. So let's just start with that. Tell me where you grew up and your early career.
Yeah, no, of course. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I think actually like sharing with you that this is something very close to my heart, it felt quite vulnerable to me because I was just like, oh, as soon as you kind of open these floodgates of actually going down into different stories, it could be quite interesting. And I'm always very conscious of who's around, who am I speaking to, how's it going to be perceived, how's it going to land. So yeah, bear with me on this story. It might take a few little turns here and there. But yeah, so I grew up in Essex with my mum, my dad and my brother. Very, very lucky to have a wonderful, loving family to grow up with. I am the first of my generation to go to university. So both my parents kind of left school with not too many qualifications. My dad left at 16 with no kind of qualification to his name, but then went and joined the Navy and upskilled there, actually in tech, which he started on like radar equipment and when they went into telecoms when it was still called telecommunications. And growing up, I kind of saw how he navigated the tech world just through hard graft and giving things a go, and his personality and his personal skills of moving up through the ladder and through different organizations and things like that. So I think one of the main things that has definitely impacted my career or my kind of enthusiasm, passion to excel or kind of move through the channel in my career has come from my parents. They were very much installed into us the thing of, if you're going to get anywhere in life, you're going to get there through hard work and grit and grafting and sweat and tears. We didn't have a network growing up of people that were working in senior positions or who owned their own businesses or could hook us up with like interviews or could talk to us. And very few people I knew that actually kind of worked in a corporate role within the city and things like that. So if we were going to make it, we had to properly like make it on our own. And they very much kind of drilled home the fact of, if you're struggling, just work harder. So if you needed more money, you pick up another job. And there was no sense of pride in what you were doing, in the sense of just you did everything. So you could be a waitress one day, cleaning bathrooms the next, if you were actually working in a bit of like a marketing role here or a receptionist there, and it doesn't matter what it is, like the main pride that you feel would be like working hard. So I think that has always stuck with me as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a common thread with all the people that I've spoken to is that work ethic, that drive, and you just do whatever you need to do to get on because there is no magic network of people willing to give you a step up or a helping hand because you may be the first person in your family to go to university, like you've mentioned to me previously, or, I was the first person to actually ever work in an office. So it was, you don't know, you haven't got these networks of individuals around you that can give you that. So no, it's such a common theme across all of the people that I've interviewed. Hayley, you mentioned about doing loads of different jobs. Tell me about the first job that you did do.
Oh, so my first job, I started working when I was 14, and I think the longest time I've been out of work since I was 14 has been 8 days when I actually opted to take it as a holiday. So my very first job was in a bakery at the end of my road, and they paid me £2.50 an hour. And I think I worked for like 6 hours a day at £2.50 an hour. And I was allowed to have one item from the bakery, which was normally a pink iced bun.
Oof,
Um,
nice.
yeah, and I remember keeping my first ever pay slip. And then when I went off to university, I had a couple of little jobs. But when I left the bakery, they were paying me £5 an hour. So
Wow.
I was so pleased that in 4 years I went from £2.50 to £5 an hour.
You doubled your salary.
Exactly.
Imagine doing that now in 5 years. So so you went from the bakery, then you went to university, is that right?
Yeah, so I went to university and actually studied like antique restoration, so conservation
Wow.
restoration at Lincoln. Absolutely loved it. Was my complete and utter passion. So history, art, a bit of science. That was kind of what I had in my mind, what I was going to do. Left university at peak recession and decided that I was going to start my own business. Why I thought this was a good idea, I'll never know. But I was extremely stubborn. I kind of am still extremely stubborn and thought, do you know what, I can do this. And I didn't know anybody that ran their own business. I didn't know nobody in my family, none of my family friends, no one. I didn't have anybody to consult or chat through it with. I had a chat with like a business account manager at NatWest to try and work out what did I need to do to run a business. And I did private antique restoration for like clients, and I went to antique fairs and had a little stall and did demonstrations and gave out business cards. I was awful at business, absolutely awful. And I look back now and I cringe, but I have to remember I was like 21 and just flying by the seat of my pants. I remember once I'd spent a week and a half restoring a vase for a lady, like a big ceramic vase, really, really detailed. I was really, really proud of it. And she came to collect it, and she was a little old lady who looked really kind of frail. And she said, "Oh, how much do I owe you?" And I said, "Oh, just give us 20 quid." This is how bad I was at business. And I know that lady probably went back to a gorgeous mansion house full of antiques. But yeah, it taught me that that was not for me. I was not very good at charging people and like chasing people for money. And also to subsidize running that business, I also had three other jobs and worked night shifts and weekends and everything under the sun. So 5 years down the line, it was not sustainable. And I got my first kind of step into a marketing role.
I was going to say, I mean, how on earth do you go from restoring antiques to getting into the RT channel?
Yeah, it's one of those things. So one of my part-time jobs whilst doing the business was working at like a very, very posh hotel and working with them on their like corporate events. And then they needed a wedding coordinator, so I took that on. And then they were looking for the marketing like assistants, so I took that on. And then there was like, do you know what? This is actually really fun. I'm really enjoying it. So when I decided to close down the business, I went full time there and worked my way through lots of different marketing roles, agency side, working in advertising, working in-house in like colleges and education. And then I fell into tech by the fact that I needed to earn more money. And that was the thing. I was scraping by and literally making ends meet doing the job working for a really tiny agency, which I loved. It was really creative and great fun. But it got to the point where I really needed a wage bump. And I found myself in tech working as like an account manager. Again, probably not being pushy enough with like sales and chasing people for money. So I wouldn't say I was necessarily the best salesperson at all in the slightest. And then I stalked Natilik basically until a marketing role came up and literally jumped in and was just like, me, please, I'll come do it.
I love that. You stalked Natilik. What on earth, what made you decide to stalk Natilik? And how did you go from stalking Natilik to get your job at Natilik?
So funny. I was the like partner account manager for Natilik for when I was working at a company called Verint, who sold call recording and like contact center equipment. And they were one of my partners. And as soon as I started working for like with them, I was like, this is a great company. I really like this vibe. I really want to work here. So I'd pitch up every week and sit in the office with a bright orange laptop. I think they gave me a bright orange laptop because they were like no one wants this bright orange laptop. We'll give it to that girl over there. She's not going to complain. And I sat there and I said hello to everybody and I made myself like really visible. And just just made sure I talked to everybody and made it very obvious that I would love to work here and what a great company this was. And then when Rory Tempest at the time was CMO and he put an advert out on LinkedIn, I think I waited like 45 seconds before messaging him and be like, can I have a chat about this? I still remember the interview at Natilik because I hadn't really done very many corporate interviews before. And I don't think, obviously it worked because I got the job and I'm working there, but I didn't really have very many friends or people who also worked in the corporate world. So I didn't have anybody to bounce idea of like, what is etiquette? How do you prepare for this? I just did a very Hayley way of just like, I'm just going to be me and I'm just going to wing it essentially, which I do not recommend anybody listening to this podcast to just go wing an interview because preparation is key. It is good. And I remember being in the interview and Mike Danson, who's the CEO, was there. And I hadn't done my research fully to know who he was. So he introduced himself and I was like, oh, that's nice. But he didn't say like, I'm the CEO. I was like, okay, so a person called Mike in the room and a person called Al and Matt and Rory. I was just like, okay. And they were like, oh, would you like to load your presentation? I was like, oh, I haven't got a presentation. I'm just going to chat to you about what I think. And I had done some pre-interview tasks and I'd done all the exercises and I was talking through that. But I remember like it was I think they were just a bit like, who is this person? Like she's a bit odd, isn't she? But I can't help it. I am very much me and I don't have any filters and I don't have any facades and also I don't have the energy to do that.
Hayley, don't ever change because it's what makes you you. And I'm sure that's what they saw as well because you ended up at Natilik, right? So it couldn't have been all that bad. And, and how long have you been there?
Over 6 years now. Yeah.
Wow. So, and you continue to smash it. So, I mean, you must be doing something right. So please embrace that quirkiness and authenticity is lovely. It's very endearing, and I wish more people would do the same. So, what do you think have been your biggest challenges that you've faced, and how did you overcome them?
Well, looking through the lens of kind of like class and background and socioeconomic, one thing which has always cropped up in certain situations and something which really irks me is people's prejudices. Can't even say the word. Prejudices, no, biases. Let's go with bias. That comes out good. On some things which they are completely and utterly unaware of. So myself, born and bred Essex girl, and whenever I tell people that, and I say, and they go, "Oh, like where have you come from today? Like where are you from?" Oh, like oh, I'm from Essex. And I'd probably say 9 times out of 10, the next question which comes out of their mouth is, or the next statement is, you know, we don't sound like you're from Essex. And then it really kind of boils my blood because I'm like, well, what do you expect someone from Essex to sound like? And therefore, if you have an expectation of what they sound like, do you have an expectation of what they're like or how they act or what you expect from them or what kind of standards or level? And it really bugs me. And I think it's just that additional level of kind of like bias that has always like sat on a like yeah like unresolved or unattacked in a
Yeah.
conversation, and especially in the tech world, you know, there are a lot of different barriers which you have to kind of navigate, and you have to spend extra thought and energy on. I remember having a conversation with a colleague and talking about how sometimes it's just a bit exhausting that yeah, I find that as a woman going into like a room, if we're going into a meeting, I have to think, right, where am I going to sit around this table? Where am I going to sit? So I'm not closest to the door so that when they want coffees, I'm not the automatic person to go get coffees. And I want to be able to be in a position where I'm not going to easily get like forgotten. And also it's like, what chairs are in that room? Are they going to like, I don't, things like that of like, you know, is my outfit okay? Are they going, how am I going to be perceived? This, that, and the other. And then one of the other things like, are they going to make a comment about where I'm from or anything like that? So could be just me, could be very much my own insecurities. I don't know, but it's something which has always niggled me.
I think, you know, that's quite interesting because I've never ever thought about where I sit in a room, not once.
Really?
So I think some of that is probably just who you are as an individual and maybe overthinking stuff and slight bit of imposter syndrome creeping in there.
Oh,
Um,
definitely.
but you know, it is true. A lot of people do say the same, and it is about trying to portray this person that you think that they want you to be, as opposed to being your true, authentic self and who you truly are. And this is, you know, the industry that we're in can be quite elitist. So you're surrounded with a lot of people who are very privately educated, who have come from very privileged upbringings. And when you know that that's not your natural upbringing, it makes you feel even more of an imposter. So imposter syndrome affects people not just through whether you're female, it's anybody that's in a minority. So you're doubly feeling it because not only are you female, but you have come from that low socioeconomic background with that Essex accent deep stuck deep down there in those roots. And every time you're in this scenario, a natural, oh, are they going to find me out, will come to fore. But no matter, even no matter what minority you're in, everybody will be feeling the same. And unconscious bias is something that we all have to deal with. I was saying to you before we started the call, you know, somebody mentioned to me when I was telling them about my upbringing, that I was too posh to be poor. And I'm like, what? I've never been called posh in my life. But I've spent my whole life trying to hide this Cockney reject accent that I had growing up in a London overspill town in the, small market town of St Neots. So, it's no different. It's sort of, you try and do your best to hide who you really are, when actually, if you are just naturally who you are, the world would be a much better place, and you'd probably be, doing a much better job. So it's a common thread, Hayley, and it's very consistent across the people that I've been speaking to. So they're your biggest challenges, but what would you say has been your proudest moment of your career, and why is that?
I think one of the things which comes to mind is, you know, setting up the women in tech community at Natilik with my colleague Emma Simpkin, who is phenomenal, and she is like an inspiration. She was the kind of the enthusiasm and the power, and she kind of gave me strength in conversations in the room when we were like bringing it to the business. So when we pitched it to Natilik over, well, I suppose 6 years ago now, about like we'd like to set up this community, I personally was quite scared. I was like, oh, how are they gonna react to this? Are they gonna think that we just want to cause trouble? Or, like, we've got to make sure that we are positioning this for actually what we want this community to be empowered to do, which is to shine a light on the amazing opportunities that the tech sector can give, and encourage the next generation to have it as an option. But back in July, we held our first hackathon with the STEMettes, which is an organisation you put us in touch with, actually, Yvonne, which I was very, very pleased with. And we had over like 35 like young girls across the office in Natilik building apps and working together to think of solutions around sustainability and technology. And just to kind of be in that space and see that, like, girls from as young as like 5-6 years old up to like 19 get round a table and code together and ideate together and work together on that. I was like, wow, even if we are just the venue that facilitates this and the people which can put a bit of funding towards putting pizzas on or stuff like that, it was really nice to see actually come to fruition of something being proactive. And we worked with one of our technology partners, Pure Storage, who are fantastic and do a lot in that space as well. I think that was a big kind of pride moment for me. I think those kind of moments around seeing other people reaching their full potential,
Yeah,
that's where I feel most proud. Like, I think I was nothing really for myself and me, but like that kind of springs to mind. Yeah, I think
and
that's
quite
what
rightly
changes
so.
the dad.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, what you guys, yourself and Emma, who I've also had the privilege of getting to know over the last few years, have done an incredible job. And people look on the outside in, and it's something to aspire to, is what you've achieved in that short space of time. And yes, I love the STEMettes, as you know, and there's nothing more rewarding and inspiring than seeing these young individuals that have not had any preconceived ideas or no biases placed upon them, just learning how to code as well, because there's a lot of teaching that goes on as well. So even if you've never done it, they get taught how to do it on the day, which I thought was incredible. And what I learned was, if you can read a menu or read a recipe, you can code, because it's literally just a set of instructions. But what they produce at the end of the day is absolutely dumbfounding, and like you say, really, really, really rewarding. So yeah, I can see why you would say that. Absolutely. So, how do you think that coming from a low social economic background has impacted your career, both or one of positively or negatively?
Yeah, that's a real interesting one. I think definitely positive in the fact that, like I said, we growing up, it was like you work hard, you put every single hour of the day in, and just it was installed in us like make sure you're being productive, you're being useful. Like if you do the work, it will kind of come to fruition. Um, I think that has always played as a strength to any role I've been in. However, it has also been a little bit of a hindrance in the sense that I have struggled greatly with my work-life balance. So, um, when everybody went into lockdown and there was no strong physical delimitation between work and home, that kind of mentality kicked in of like a right, well, this is your opportunity to put even more hours in and to be even more productive because there's nobody there telling you to stop. And I was living on my own in a one-bedroom flat. There was nobody saying, okay, that's enough now. And it's taking me a long time to undo that mentality of I have to be performing and outputting at this level, which requires me to work from 8 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock at night, when actually that's it's not. It's it just can't be sustained. So a positive in regards to I will always give 110%. I work really hard, and hopefully every employer that's ever had me can hand on heart say that, yeah, no, she does graft, that girl. But it's knowing when to stop. I think I'm still working on that. Haven't got that side.
And I think, but again, that's a maturity thing as well, because when you are early in your career, you think, you're preconceived with this, you've got to work hard to show your value, and it is just putting the hours in. When you get a bit more experience, then you realize actually it's the output of what you produce as opposed to the hours that you work. But that comes with experience and learning more about yourself and setting some really good boundaries, because most organizations will care about what you're producing, not how many hours that you're working. And I know for a fact Natilik is definitely one of those. So it's again work in progress. Nobody every day's a school day, Hayley.
Yeah.
But the fact that you've already identified that and you're aware of it is a brilliant place to start, because some people just continue and end up burning themselves out. So don't do that. That's not a good place to be.
There have been some occasions, like in my career, where I've had to really like fake it until I'm out of the situation. And I know this sounds really silly, but I've come across a couple of times. So growing up, um, yeah, like money was tight. Money was very tight, and that restricted, opportunities which some other people may have grown up with. But as I've gotten older and within the corporate world, even down to little things like going out to a restaurant and the difference in people's exposure to different types of food and understanding, what things even are, and sometimes I look at a menu and I'm at a place and there's like 7 different like cutlery sets and they're asking me on my wine opinions and I'm like, is it red, white or pink? Which and the menu, I'm like quickly googling underneath like what is Gravlax or whatever it is, and I'm like, I don't know. And everyone else seems so comfortable in these environments, and I am not comfortable in these environments at all. And for a long time, I would be very much like, just try and just like suck it up, and then I'll order something which is completely not what I wanted to order at all, but just to kind of get something ordered and carry on. Whereas I think as I've grown a little bit older, I think I'm more comfortable in myself to be like, does anybody know what this is? Like, or like, how does this work and stuff like this? And just to own it because there may be somebody else around the table who's also thinking, geez, this is not the environment that I'm used to or I feel comfortable in. Um, so sometimes that happens in the corporate world, which throws me. But even down to when you're in a situation, and especially in the tech industry, and especially in like the channel world, everybody knows everybody. That people love to name drop on that like seniority level, and they worked with this, or they went to, yeah, they went to uni with that person, or they worked here and they were CEO and CFO at this company. And I'm like, yeah, no, don't, not coming in with any kind of big networks to leverage here. It's just who I'm meeting on my day-to-day in my role now. But I think sometimes I've tried to flip it now to be like, oh, actually, maybe you could introduce me to that person, because
Brilliant.
it's never going to change unless you're just like, no, I don't know them. No, haven't met them, not in those circles, but maybe you can help me get into those circles, and or just kind of put a name in.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how I did it. You know, I didn't know anybody coming into the industry either. Now I've got some amazing individuals on my phone in terms of from CEOs across the various organizations, all through doing exactly that. Just putting myself out there, having conversations, just being a bit braver about and being more intentional and seeing how, you know, we can help each other, which is, you know, again, one of the main reasons why the channel community was born was because of that reason. It's how can we connect more people together that are all there, just you're all there for this, most people for the same reasons. So how can we share and extend that out to other people that aren't as fortunate to have that level of network? I'll tell you a funny story about the restaurant side. So again, this is a common theme that comes across, comes up with a lot of people that I've spoken to. So about the knives and forks. I mean, why do you need multiple sets of knives and forks at a dinner table for one? That is, has always, you know, been a minefield for me. But I remember the first time I ever went to a restaurant with work. This is my first ever corporate job, and we went to a steak restaurant. I'd never eaten steak in my life, and we were with clients, and I'd got invited out. And I remember the waiter coming over to me, and he said, "How would you like your steak?" And I just said, "Cooked." I have no idea that it comes medium rare or well done. And I mean, everybody absolutely fell into like hysterics, and I can take the mickey out myself. So I found it quite funny. But it's those situations. I'd never eaten steak. We never had takeaways. We never went out to restaurants. It was, so it is a minefield. And I think, and it's some of the things that people just take for granted, and because they've just grown up with it. But if you've not been in that scenario or ever experienced it, it's mind blowing. And I also remember going to this is not too long ago, a few years ago. Literally, I went to my first a big dinner with HP. And it was with all of the senior execs in our industry. And I was sat on the table with the MD at the time, Mark Walters, and people like Martin Halliwell. And everybody stood up until I sat down. And then they sat down. I thought that was a bit weird. And then no one would eat until I started eating. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, because they were all waiting and I didn't know this etiquette, and I felt really embarrassed. And like, I didn't know that this etiquette even is. And this is literally as recently as like 5 or 6 years ago. So, Hayley, I feel your pain. So,
But
knowing
it,
what sorry, go on. You was
I
going to
was going
say.
to say, but it is things like now I kind of, I've armed myself with like a little bit of like wine knowledge. So at least I could be like, oh, I know those two, what those two reds are like, or I know what those two whites are like. And I know that you should have like white wine with fish and like red wine with red. And that has helped me. Like sometimes if I equip myself with just a little bit of knowledge, so I could be like, right, I'm not gonna like drown in this situation, but I know enough to be able to then pass it off to someone who actually proper looks through like a wine menu. And so I'm like a little bit, I know a little bit now to get by. I think that's all.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love wine, so even though I'm not drinking it at the minute, yeah, I've learned through drinking a lot of wine
Yeah.
and going out for lots of dinners. But obviously, I'm a lot older than you, so I've got a little bit more experience on that front. So, knowing what you know now and everything that you've achieved, what would you say to a younger Hayley?
I would say one of the things that I didn't do when I was younger, and I so wish I did, like follow up and properly connect with everybody that you meet and you get intro to. Um, I remember I was traveling on the train from Lincoln to King's Cross back from uni once, and I was sat next to this lady who was suited and booted, and she looked pristine. And I was just chatting with her, talking about like, I'm not sure what to do after university, think I might start my own business and this, that, the other. And she was talking about what she did. And she was the like head honcho, like top dog at HSBC, looking after all of their like elite retail, or like not real estate, sorry, like real estate across the globe. And I liked it. And she gave me her business card. She was like, when you're next free in London, give me a call. Let's go for a coffee and let's see if we can like find something or work something out, or get you some experience. And I took her business card and I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, ah. And I remember her getting off the train and seeing her walk with her like beautiful like Louis Vuitton luggage and a pair of like Louboutin shoes and the red undersoles. I was like, wow, like she's a real like boss bitch. Like she's got it all together. Did I call her? No, I didn't call her. Like, and sometimes I think back on that and I'm like, oh, I wonder how many people I've met across the years, which I all were good intentions to be like, yeah, they're a good person to have in your network and connect with and follow up with, but didn't. So I think my advice to younger me was like follow up and start building your network from a younger age, because you get to your 30s and then you're looking for like new opportunities or looking for opportunities to give back or do this and the other, and you don't know where to start, and it can feel quite challenging and quite daunting. So I wish I had started to build my earlier.
Well, you've done a great job from then on, so you can't be too harsh on yourself. But that is a great piece of advice. Do start to network. I don't think people quite appreciate just the value of having a good network, and you never know when these people you may be able to help each other out. So it's always worth having. I've got a really broad network of people from various different industries, of various different seniorities. It doesn't matter who they are or what they do. It's just staying connected. But it's hard work. Don't get me wrong. It's not easy to keep connected to these people, but it does pay dividends. So, what support and help do you think that companies could be doing to help individuals that come from a low social economic background?
The one thing I think that would be useful would be, the interview process can be very daunting. And when you are unaware of like the unspoken, unwritten rules of like corporate life, it can throw you off guard. And it can then, especially in an interview situation, can make you feel like absolutely panicked and throw you off your game. I think maybe a little bit more like kindness or like sensitivity around if people might make a little bit of a faux pas in regards to their initial engagement, literally from just a lack of knowledge of what is etiquette, would be something that maybe organizations could factor in regards to their interview training. So it's some stuff we just take for granted. Like, no, I'm not talking about like the basics, like make sure you're there on time. That's kind of social norm, and that's kind of making a good impression. But I just think sometimes having a bit of awareness of, this could be someone's first experience of the corporate world, and let's make it a good one, because it's our responsibility to make it a good one.
Yeah, no, I really like that. So don't be judgmental.
Yeah.
Don't be biased. and then just try and look beyond the accent and the, you know, the lack of knowledge around the social etiquette, and look for the talent that could be, you know, trying to get out, that just with the right support and encouragement could fly.
Yeah.
No, I like that. That's a really great piece of advice, Hayley. And what one piece of advice would you give to someone that comes from a low social economic background who is trying to navigate a career in the channel?
I think it would be like, don't hide who you are. Don't The energy you will spend trying to fit in and to hide who you are, if you took that energy and you put it into the passion of what you want to do, it's going to serve you a hell of a lot better. So I think that's what I would say. In it could be down to the fact, like, I don't really wear too much makeup because I'd rather have the time in bed, because I think I perform better with more sleep. Um,
I'm
and
exactly the same.
yeah, and I I know that my pronunciation on some words is not spot on, and I know that I can be a little bit clueless sometimes, but I'm just like, it's just me. It's just me, and you just have to take me as you find me. I don't think that trying to be somebody else is sustainable. And I think if you suffer even from the slightest bit of imposter syndrome, trying to maintain a facade is just going to absolutely drain you. So that would be my advice. Just, there will be an organization out there who will accept you for who you are and the skills you have and what you can bring. If it takes you a little bit longer to find that place, then be committed to finding it.
I absolutely love that. Hayley, you have well and truly smashed that class ceiling. Thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me in the conversation. It's been fab.
Oh, it's been great. Thank you.